Hi, I'm Jerry Sumney. I wrote The Bible, an Introduction. I wrote this book because I think that introductions to the Bible often leave out some things that are important for understanding these texts. I think that we need an introduction that applies critical method, as many do, but then goes on to ask what these texts try to tell us about what the writers were trying to do. What were they trying to accomplish religiously, as well as socially and politically? While many introductions to the Bible talk about the social and political agendas, show what critical method does, I think we need to get on to what the religious message of these texts is. And to do that, we're simply granting these texts what they intended to do. It doesn't say how we should evaluate the religious beliefs that they have, but we're being true to these texts more if we look at them as religious texts. So I want to grant them the methods they use to interpret their world. I think it's not enough to notice that a portion of the text is a myth and then say what myth does in general. I think we need to examine what this particular text does with its specific myth. What understandings of the world does it give? What understandings of human beings? Then we can think about what that perspective did to those people in that time, or what it did for them, and what it's done since then. Or again, I think it's not enough for us to notice that these texts sometimes advocate atrocities. For example, the slaughter of thousands of people. We can't just say they're ancient people and that kind of an enactment of faith is not acceptable in our day. We need to go beyond that to see why they thought such killings were a good thing. We might still disagree with that, but we need to understand them on their own terms. And so we come to this understanding not to try to convert people, not to try to get them to believe the way these texts did, but rather so that we come to a clear understanding of them. As I understand it, the humanities function within the curriculum to try to get students to enter into genuine acts of understanding of those who know the world from different perspectives than what they do. And so taking the text on these terms, I think serves that basic agenda of the humanities. I also wrote this book because I think the Bible is a rich, multi-layered text that has been and remains a foundational text for our culture. And to understand it in more of its depth helps us understand the way that it has, in fact, shaped our culture. Without understanding something about the Bible, we won't understand much that goes on in our world, how political decisions have been reached, or even how the self has been conceived in our culture. And so I hope this introduction to the Bible helps students understand that cultural background. I also wrote this book because I want this classic text to be accessible. It's an ancient book written in ancient forms that are sometimes difficult for students to understand, but I want them to be able to pick up this book and see what it says for themselves. Far too many people equate taking the Bible seriously with reading it in some literalistic fashion. And one of the things I'd like to demonstrate here is that using critical methods on biblical texts leads to important questions about the meaning of existence and how our lives should be lived together in society. Again, whether we understand those to be the proper ways to conceive of the self and society or not makes little difference here. This text has been very influential, and so I want students to have the equipment they need, the knowledge they need, the sensitivity to literature that they need to understand how this text has shaped our culture.